It was supposed to be temporary. 2 weeks, tops. That's what my boss said when he asked to crash at my place. His condo had flooded, some busted pipe in the ceiling, and the insurance company stuck him on a wait list for temp housing. He looked rough when he asked me. Tie half off, shirt wrinkled, the kind of guy who usually looked too perfect to be real, suddenly looking very, very real. I should have said no. Instead, I shrugged and said, "Yeah, sure, of course." It wasn't like I had much space, just a one-bedroom with a pull-out couch and a window view of a brick wall. But I'd worked under Brandon for a year and a half, and despite him being straight, hot, and way out of my league, we'd developed this weird sort of office friendship. He was blunt, sarcastic, way too confident, but he was good to me. Treated me like an equal, not just his assistant. So yeah, I let him stay. That first night was surreal. Watching Brandon, my boss, drink beer in my kitchen, wearing joggers and a hoodie instead of a $1,000 suit, talking to me like we were just two guys, two regular guys, not boss and employee. "Damn," he said, eyeing my tiny living room. "You really live like this?" "Like what?" I asked. He cracked a smile. "Minimalist. I dig it." Right then, I told myself not to overthink it. But overthinking became inevitable. Brandon was 6 feet of muscle, jawline, and trouble. The kind of guy who made people turn in elevators. And now he was walking around my apartment shirtless after morning workouts, lounging on my couch in boxers, and sleeping a few feet away from my room. Every moment felt like a test of restraint, and he wasn't making it easy. He'd say things, weird little things that felt like jokes but landed strange. "You always wear shorts that tight?" he teased one morning as I made coffee. I laughed it off. He smirked and added, "Don't worry, it's a compliment." Then there were the touches. Casual, sure, but more than before. A hand on my back when squeezing past me in the kitchen, a nudge with his foot while we watched a movie, the way he'd rest his arm behind me on the back of the couch, fingers brushing my shoulder every time he shifted. I told myself it didn't mean anything, but something was shifting. It was the 6th night when everything snapped. I couldn't sleep. Got up for water sometime around 2 a.m. The apartment was dark, except for the kitchen light above the stove. Brandon was standing there, back to me, drinking water in nothing but briefs. I froze. He turned, totally calm. "You always wake up at weird hours?" "Sometimes," I said, my voice catching in my throat. His eyes scanned me. I was in just a tee and boxers, and the air between us felt heavy. "You always wear that to bed?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "Says the guy in briefs." He laughed, low and quiet. "Touché." The silence after was thick. Then he said, almost out of nowhere, "You ever think you know exactly who someone is, and then they start surprising you?" I stared at him, trying to read his face. "Like how?" I asked. He shrugged, looking away. "I don't know. Just a thought." And just like that, he brushed past me, his bare arm grazing mine, and disappeared back into the living room. I stood there, heart pounding, glass still in my hand, wondering what the hell just happened. After that night, something shifted, subtle, but definitely there. Brandon started hanging around the apartment more. Instead of late nights at the office or gym, he'd come home early. He started helping with dinner, doing the dishes, making comments like domestic life suits us, followed by that half smirk of his that made it impossible to tell if he was joking or not. And the couch situation? That got weird too. One night, we were watching some crime docuseries, both half draped across the couch. It was late, and I was starting to nod off when I felt him shift closer. Not just a little, like his thigh pressed against mine, his arm grazing mine, and he didn't move. At all. When I looked over, he just said, "You always this warm? Your couch is freezing." I should have moved. I didn't. The next night, he asked, "You mind if I crash in your room instead of the couch tonight? My back's wrecked." I blinked at him. "Like in my bed?" He shrugged like it was no big deal. "You've got a queen. I'll stay on top of the blanket." I just need better support, man. And just like that, Brandon, my boss, was in my bed. We didn't touch. Not really, but the space between us might as well have been buzzing. I lay there stiff as a board, listening to his breathing slow as he drifted off. I told myself to sleep, but my mind kept racing. The next morning, I woke up before him. He was turned toward me, one arm flopped halfway across the bed like it might have landed on me in his sleep. He looked peaceful, less in control, younger somehow. I stared way too long before getting up. Later that day, I made breakfast. He walked in wearing one of my t-shirts, stretching like it was any other Saturday morning. "You make coffee too?" he asked, sitting down. "I do everything," I said, sliding him a plate. He took a bite, chewed, and said, "You're gonna make some guy really happy one day." That hit me weird. I looked up. "Some guy?" he grinned. "What, you thought I didn't know?" My stomach dropped. "Know what?" "That you're into guys." I froze. He kept eating, casual as ever. "You talk in your sleep, by the way." My face went hot. "What did I say?" He shrugged. "Something about someone named Eric." "I don't know." Sounded intense. I swallowed hard. "Sorry." Brandon looked up, met my eyes. "Don't be. It's not a big deal." There was something in the way he said it. Not pity, not judgment. Just open. "You ever been with a guy?" I asked before I could stop myself. He leaned back in the chair, studying me. "No." Then he paused. "Not yet." The words landed like a punch. My breath caught. "What does that mean?" He smiled, slow. "I'm just saying, life's long. People surprise you." That was the moment I knew I was in trouble. Because the way he said it, so calm, so matter-of-fact, made it impossible not to hope for something I wasn't supposed to want. Not from him. Not from my boss. I kept replaying that conversation all day. Not yet. 2 words, but they turned my brain into a mess. I didn't know if he meant anything by it. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe he was just being one of those straight guys who think they're being chill and open-minded. Or maybe it was something more. But how do you ask your boss if he's flirting? You don't. You shut up and act normal. Except I couldn't. That night, we went out for drinks. Brandon had a client meeting cancel, and he suggested we hit this dive bar near my apartment. Just the 2 of us. A couple of beers, some wings, a game on the screen above us. Normal bro stuff. But it wasn't normal. At least, not to me. He sat too close again. When we shared the basket of fries, his fingers kept brushing mine. And I noticed, every time they did, he didn't pull away quickly. He lingered. And the looks? Jesus. They weren't like the glances he gave in the office. These were longer. Slower. Like he was sizing me up. Like he was watching for something. At one point, after his second beer, he leaned in and said, "You ever think about quitting?" "Quitting what?" I asked, thrown off. "The job, the rat race, all of it." I gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, all the time. Why?" He stared at me for a beat. "Just wondering, if I did it, I think I'd want to live more simply. Somewhere quiet, just peace. No suits, no deadlines. No people pretending to be something they're not." Something about the way he said that last part hit me hard. "You think you've been pretending?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just took another sip of beer and looked down at the condensation on the bottle. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe I've just started realizing what I actually want." Then he looked up at me, and I swear, for a second, it felt like the world went quiet. That look, it was like he was telling me without saying it. We walked home in silence. The night was cool, the streets mostly empty, but I felt like my skin was on fire. I could feel him beside me, tall and calm and unreadable. When we got to the apartment, I reached for my keys, but he stopped me with a hand on my shoulder. I turned. He looked nervous. Brandon. Nervous. I don't want to make this weird, he said. Okay, I said slowly, but I've been thinking a lot. Since I moved in. Since I started seeing you outside of work. My pulse was pounding. And? He hesitated. Then, quietly, he said, I like being around you. More than I should. That was it. The line. The unspoken crossed. I didn't know what to say. I stood there like an idiot, heart racing, staring at the guy the first thought I'd never get close to, suddenly standing in front of me, saying things I never thought I'd hear. And then, softly, he added, You don't have to say anything, I just needed you to know. Then he turned and walked inside, leaving me standing in the hallway, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do now. I didn't sleep that night. Not because Brandon said anything dramatic. He didn't confess some deep love or try to kiss me. He just dropped that quiet little truth and left me alone with it. I like being around you. More than I should. What did that even mean? Was he testing the waters? Was it guilt? Curiosity? Or was he actually saying what I thought he was saying? That he liked me. Not just as a roommate or coworker, but liked me. I ran through every moment we'd shared since he moved in. The lingering touches, the long stares, the half-teasing comments that suddenly seemed not so innocent. But I was scared to believe it, because if I let myself think he wanted something more, if I let myself hope, and then I was wrong, that would break me. By morning, I looked like hell. Puffy eyes, zero sleep, a headache pulsing behind my eyes. Brandon was already up, standing in the kitchen shirtless, making eggs like nothing had happened. Morning, he said, flipping something in the pan. I gave him a tight nod. Hey! He didn't press, didn't ask if I'd thought about what he said. But I felt the tension crackling between us like static electricity, unspoken, humming underneath every second. He handed me a plate and sat across from me at the table. Then, halfway through his food, he said, You ever think we're all just pretending? I looked up. Pretending what? He shrugged. To be fine, to be who everyone expects. I stared at him. Sometimes, I said. He nodded, chewing slowly, his eyes locked on mine. I think I'm tired of pretending. Then he added, especially around you. The plate of food in front of me became irrelevant. I couldn't move, couldn't even blink. You're not pretending around me, I said, unsure if it was a question or a statement. I'm trying not to, he said quietly. I wanted to ask what that meant. I wanted to ask 100 things. But instead, I said, So what now? He looked at me, and for the first time I saw it fully, vulnerability. Like he was giving me something rare, fragile. That depends on you, he said. I don't want to make this awkward, or push something that shouldn't happen. But if there's a chance that maybe you want something too, I just need to know. I felt like I couldn't breathe. He was waiting. My straight boss, sitting across from me in my kitchen, asking if I wanted him. I finally said, I've wanted something from the start. Brandon's shoulders dropped a little, like he'd been holding his breath too. Then he stood, took a step toward me, paused. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, voice low. Me either, I admitted. But neither of us moved away. Not this time. The space between us felt razor thin. Brandon stood in front of me, close but not touching, like he was waiting for permission. Like this was all new to him. Because it was. At least, that's what I kept reminding myself. This was the guy who spent most of his adult life pretending to be straight, the guy who never let anything slip at work. And now here he was, looking at me like I was the only person in the room that mattered. You sure about this? I asked, my voice barely audible. He gave a small nod. No, not totally. But I'm sure I don't want to keep pretending nothing's happening. That was all I needed. I reached out, slow at first, placing my hand lightly on his hip. He didn't flinch, just breathed out like he'd been holding something in for weeks. Then his hand came up to my shoulder, and we both stood there for a second, just feeling it. The reality. The tension that had been building from the first night he crashed on my couch. When we finally kissed, it wasn't some dramatic movie moment. It was hesitant, clumsy at first. A question wrapped in warmth, but it deepened. Fast. Like once the door opened, neither of us knew how to stop. He kissed like someone starved. Like someone who'd been holding back for way too long. I could feel how nervous he was, but also how much he wanted it. It wasn't just curiosity. It was need. Honest, raw need. We ended up back in my room. Neither of us said much. It was all there in the way he looked at me, the way he touched me, like he was discovering something for the first time and didn't want to miss a second. Afterward, we just lay there. Neither of us spoke for a while. He was quiet, eyes on the ceiling, one arm resting behind his head, his chest still rising and falling with that slow, steady breath that always gave him away. "You okay?" I asked eventually. He turned his head toward me. "Yeah." Then, softer. "Better than okay. Just trying to make sense of everything." "I get that." He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "This isn't just a one-time thing for me." "I didn't think it was," I said, even though a part of me had been bracing for exactly that. Brandon reached over and touched my arm, just lightly. "I don't know what this means yet. I don't have a label for it. I'm still figuring it out." "That's okay," he smiled. "You're being way too chill about this. I'll freak out later. For now, I'm good." He chuckled and pulled me in a little closer. "Thanks for letting me stay," he murmured against my shoulder. I laughed. Yeah, this definitely wasn't in the job description. But deep down, I knew. Everything had changed, and nothing was going back to the way it was before. The next morning was weird in the most normal way. Brandon got up before me, again. When I finally rolled out of bed, I found him in the kitchen, frying eggs, shirtless, humming to himself like he hadn't just shattered every line between us 12 hours earlier. He looked up when I walked in. "Morning," he said, casual. I leaned against the doorframe. "You're making breakfast now?" He smirked. "You let me stay here. Least I can do is feed you." I watched him move around the kitchen like he lived there for years, not just a week and a half. And for the first time, I wasn't questioning whether it was temporary. "You sleep okay?" I asked, trying to sound breezy. He glanced over his shoulder. "Better than I have in months." We ate together like we had dozens of times before, but this time, our legs touched under the table and neither of us moved away. Later that afternoon, Brandon had to head into the office for a meeting. He stood by the door adjusting his tie, which felt surreal after everything. "You good?" he asked, noticing the way I was watching him. "Yeah. Just weird seeing you back in boss mode." He smiled. "Still the same guy." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" He stepped closer and leaned in, his voice low. "I'm sure. I just can't kiss you in the conference room." I snorted. "That's probably for the best." Then he kissed me on the cheek and left. I stood there for a full minute after the door closed, processing everything. The guy who'd been my boss, my impossible crush, was now something else, something real. But reality crept in fast. The next few days were full of these strange overlaps. Him being Brandon, the boss at work, and Brandon, the guy who pulled me into his chest at night. There was a balance we hadn't figured out yet. In the office, we kept it professional. At home, it was quiet smiles, shared takeout, and the way his fingers would brush against mine when we passed each other in the hallway. But one night, he came home late. I was on the couch in sweats, watching a show I wasn't really following. He dropped his bag by the door, loosened his tie, and didn't say anything at first. Rough day, I figured, but he walked over, stood in front of me, and said, "Can I tell you something?" I muted the TV. "Of course." He took a breath. "This week's been good. Really good, but it's also scared the hell out of me." I sat up. Yeah, I've spent my whole adult life playing it safe, doing what people expected, being the guy who fits the part. And now I'm here, with you. And I don't want to screw it up. I reached out, took his hand. You're not screwing it up. He sat down beside me, exhaling like he'd been holding in something heavy all day. I've never felt more like myself than I do right now, he said. And that's the scary part, because if this is who I really am, I don't know what that means for everything else. I squeezed his hand. It means you're finally being honest. That's all. He looked at me, eyes soft. What if I'm not ready to explain this to anyone else? Then we don't explain anything, I said. Not yet. This is yours. Ours. No one else gets a say. Brandon let out a shaky laugh. You make it sound easy, I shrugged. It's not, but it's simple. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to mine, and whispered, Thank you. For a while, we lived in that quiet space between change and certainty. Brandon still had his things at my place, still made coffee like it was his job, still came home to me instead of some empty, impersonal condo. But we didn't label it, didn't try to define what we were doing. It was just us, a new rhythm. One night, we were both home early. Something rare. We made pasta together, half joking about our terrible knife skills and burning the garlic. Afterward, we sat on the couch with our bowls and a cheap bottle of wine, watching trash TV and laughing way more than we should have. Brandon turned to me at some point and said, This feels real. I looked at him, confused. What does? This, us, you, this weird little life we accidentally built. My throat went dry. It is real, he nodded. I guess I just didn't think I could have this. Not like this. I thought I had to choose between being the guy everyone expected and being myself. I studied him for a second. And which one do you want to be? Brandon smiled, soft and tired. The one sitting on this couch next to you. That night, when we got into bed, he didn't hesitate. He curled into me like it was the most natural thing in the world. But the outside world doesn't pause just because you're happy. The next week, at work, rumors started flying. Brandon had been seen leaving my apartment early one morning by one of the other associates, the kind of guy who never missed a chance to stir the pot. Someone asked me about it directly in the break room, half joking, half fishing. Your place must have the best coffee in town if the boss is stopping by before work. I played it cool. Said he was crashing with me while his place was under renovation, which wasn't a lie, but the smirks that followed made it clear. People were talking. That night, I told Brandon. He didn't flinch, just said, Of course they are. You okay? I asked. He nodded, then paused. Yeah, I think so. I hate the idea that it might mess things up for you. You're the one who's technically my boss, I reminded him. Shouldn't you be more worried? He gave a small laugh. Maybe. But honestly, I care more about how this affects you than my job right now. That landed harder than I expected. You sure about that? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, I think I'm more sure about you than I've ever been about anything else. It was the first time he'd said anything like that out loud. Not just hints. Not just vibes. Something real. Clear. Spoken. I didn't even know what to say back. So I just reached for his hand and held it, and he held on. The next few weeks felt like we were living on borrowed time. Brandon's condo was finally repaired. His insurance representative left a voicemail saying the keys were ready for pickup. And just like that, the quiet little world we built in my apartment had an expiration date. He didn't bring it up at first. Neither did I. But the envelope sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days, unopened, both of us walking past it like it didn't exist. Then one night, after dinner, he picked it up. I didn't say anything, just sat there, trying not to look like I was holding my breath. Brandon opened it, skimmed the paper inside, and then set it down again. "Place is ready," he said quietly. "Yeah," I murmured. "Figured." Silence. He stood there for a while, hands braced on the counter, his back to me. Then, finally, without turning around, he said, "I don't want to go back." I blinked. "You don't?" He turned to face me. "No. I mean, I could. It's fixed. But it doesn't feel like home anymore." I stood up, heart racing. "So what are you saying?" He came closer, his eyes steady on mine. "I'm saying I didn't just fall for the comfort, or the pasta nights, or even the closeness, if we're being honest." I swallowed. "Then what?" "I fell for you." That was it. No games, no pretense, just Brandon, in my shitty apartment in a worn-out t-shirt, finally saying what I'd been too afraid to let myself want. I stepped in, close enough to feel his breath. Then stay. He exhaled like the words had been sitting inside him for weeks. "Yeah, okay." We didn't kiss right then. We just stood there, forehead to forehead, like neither of us wanted to break the moment. Later that night, we packed up the last of his things from the couch. Not because he was leaving, but because we both knew it wasn't temporary anymore. Not just a crash pad. Not just a blur between coworkers. This was real. 2 months later, Brandon handed in his resignation. Said he wanted to get out before the corporate machine could suck out the last of whatever soul he had left. He freelanced for a while, then started consulting part-time, giving us both a little more space to breathe. As for us, we're still figuring it out. Still figuring each other out. But now, when I wake up and see him next to me, hair messy, one arm flopped over my chest like he owns the place, I don't second guess it. He's not my boss anymore. He's just mine.